Hey guys, it's been quite a while since my last PvP tier list, and things have changed quite a lot in this past month or so. I'm looking at this PvP tier list in the terms of dueling, or more specifically tournament dueling. This won't take into account the open world mobs, and I'm not going to take bugs or exploits into account such as the stun bug or the barber heart glitch. Just because I'm assuming those will eventually be removed, they're a seasonal mechanic, and the stun bug is usually banned in tournaments anyways. So let's start off with Poison Rogues, which was the previous top tier, and I would say is still on the top of the list. Their damage is quite insane, and usually it's enough dot damage for you to die in one hit. And there's not much more to say about Poison Rogues. Now I know this is the Twisting Blades icon, but I'm going to use this as the Physical Rogue icon, which Phys Rogues have been doing pretty well actually. But for Physical Rogues, they're still strong. I'll put them in A tier, they're just not as strong as Poison Rogues. And for the next class that was on the top of the list was Barbarians, which right now there is a double swing barb that I'm going to put next to Poison Rogues. I'm going to put them under Poison Rogues because I don't think they're as strong. I think Poison Rogues are still just a little bit stronger. They have a crazy amount of sustain and healing, which gives them ultimate survivability, along of course with their insane mobility. And speaking of the double swing barb, I will want to talk about the Hoda barb. Hoda used to dominate the meta, but that was partially due to a bug. Overall, the damage was still decent, and of course just being a barbarian, they're just naturally tanky and mobile. But I think double swing barbs are just better in all cases. So I want to put them in B or C tier, but I think, you know, since I haven't seen them in such a long time, I'm just gonna assume they're quite a lot worse than double swing barbs, and I'll put them in C tier. Okay, and now for the new top tier, at least in my opinion, which are Sorks, which is amazing because Sorks used to be considered one of the worst class in PvP, just because they were so squishy. And the funny thing is that hasn't really changed, but they've made up for it with huge amounts of damage, especially Firewall Sorks. And so I'm gonna put them in S tier, but I actually think they're on the top of S tier, even above Poison Rogues. They're still a relatively new build, and I already see them topping tournaments, so I can only imagine they'll only get better. And from my own experiences, playing against a Firewall Sork is so difficult. They have amazing zone control, crazy amounts of damage, and even though they are squishy, they are pretty hard to catch and have a lot of invulnerability. So in turn, their survivability isn't as low as you think. And let's finish off the Sorks with the Lightning Sork build, or more specifically the Shotgun build, which does a lot of burst damage. But it doesn't have the same zone control as Firewall, so I'm gonna put them a tier lower. There is also a lot of other Sork builds, and Sorks probably have the highest build diversity in PvP. I do remember seeing things like Hydra Sorks, Blizzard Sorks, Ice Shard Sorks, Arclash Sorks, but I didn't want to clutter up the tier list with all of them, and they probably land somewhere in the C tier if I had to rate them. Okay, and now let's talk about my personal main, which are Necros. And here is the Blood Wave build, which actually does a lot of damage. But the main problem with Necros right now is survivability and mobility. While I think Blood Wave is pretty underrated still, I'm still gonna put them in B tier. They're not quite at the level of Sorks, Barbarians, and Rogues right now. They can definitely take fights off of them, but it kind of requires your opponent to make some severe mistakes. If we include open world PvP where there's mobs involved, I would put Blood Wave Necro in S tier. Probably at the bottom of S tier, but without those mobs to proc lucky hits and spawn corpses, the Blood Wave build is probably gonna go around B tier, maybe even low A tier, but I'll put them in B tier. Now, Bone Spear Necros have pretty similar issues as the Blood Wave Necro, except for the fact that the problem with Bone Spear is that in PvP, it's so much harder to consistently land Bone Spears. The damage is there, but you need to land quite a few consecutive shots to kill your opponent, at least for top tier, well-geared players. I do think there's potential in Bone Spear for someone to maybe pop up with a build that the community hasn't thought of before, but as of right now, I will put Bone Spear in C tier. Now, I used to think druids were pretty strong and they were pretty difficult to kill, especially bulwark builds. But on the patch, I believe that was 1.1.2, barriers were changed in Diablo 4 where they were taking the correct amount of damage when under the vulnerable effect, and I believe under damage over time effects as well. Because of that, the shield's no longer that crazy hard to pop. And one thing that the bulwark druid always had trouble with was outputting damage. And so their damage is almost non-existent. It's gonna be pretty hard to die to a bulwark druid. And I think it's kind of a trap. I don't think any top tier PvP build with druids are gonna be coming out of bulwark anytime soon, unless they figure out how to add a good amount of damage to the build. So I'm gonna place it in D tier, which was quite surprising to me because at the start of the season, I thought druids were gonna be pretty strong. But that was, of course, before the barrier changes. Now, I know this isn't every single PvP build there is out there, but these are the top ones for every class. And if there's one that I didn't mention, it's probably because it's not really popular or it just kind of sucks for PvP. But if there's any that you think I should have mentioned, please leave it down in the comments and maybe I can answer it there. Anyways, I hope this helped if you're planning on re-rolling a character for PvP, or you're starting out in PvP and you want to know the top builds. But yeah, that's all I got for you today, and thanks for checking this out.